Learning to swim is about learning from others. Be the author of your own story, not a character in somebody else's story. Get inspired by others to take action. Learn how to set goals to exceed your own expectations. So often the answer that you are looking for is right in front of you. On Learning to Swim, we highlight those answers through storytelling. Well, I am so thrilled to have Amanda Edwards on Learning to Swim again. It's always a treat to have someone come back because even though these are relatively long format conversations, I feel like we always just scratch the surface, right?
Yes, there's always something new going on. So
well, to that, yes, and we're going to get to that because you've got some really exciting things, a couple of things for sure that I want to talk to you about today. For those of you who have not maybe seen Amanda in some other format or the first Learning to Swim interview that she did, Amanda is the founder of the Silver Owl Group. And I have my owl in the background just to, I love that. I love that name. And so Amanda does several different things. She's an intuitive communicator. She is a certified spiritual coach and also a certified Reiki healer. And you have a long career in social justice, nonprofit management, and education administration. And so, and you now have your own business, the Silver Owl Group. And so I guess what I wanted to start by saying is, so you've got this very rich spiritual side to yourself. You do have psychic abilities, and you are also a medium. And then it may seem unusual or even perhaps kind of counterintuitive to folks to look at your resume and look at all the relatively woo types of work that you've been doing. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Certainly. It's a big bridge. I feel like my path that I'm on now is all about bridging parts of myself and offering help to others to bridge those parts of our human nature that we have, our boots on the ground, doing work in the earthly plane, very real, demanding subject areas that we want to help our fellow human beings. We care about this earth that we're living on. It's all really grounded. I always talk about roll up your sleeves, get dirty, kind of engaging with this human existence that we have. For me, one of the big drives to do that work, the emotion and the sense of connection to other people and the earth itself, comes from a really strong sense of there's more going on here than we talk about a lot. We are bigger, more capable, more empowered than we talk about on a day-to-day basis as far as our spiritual selves, our ability to tune in and connect with each other is happening all of the time on different levels. And so I try to make that process accessible to everyone. I'm not going around trying to recruit people to be mediums or, do psychic readings for their neighbors all the time. I more care about enabling people to understand their full human apparatus that they are as a spiritual being and this physical self, so that the work that they care about, the issues that really matter in our shared time, in our political life, our societies, that we can do better in those places because we're fully empowered spiritually as well.
Yeah. So just to put it in my very lay, kind of blunt terms, what I'm hearing you say is that there is it's about bringing your whole self into your life and
Very
or
much.
into your work, and that it can be I kind of have this visual where if we are not in touch with the spiritual side of our selves and our existence, that it kind of, when we embrace that, it kind of fills out all the edges.
Absolutely. I think it's important for two reasons. On the far extreme, if we are severely out of touch with our spiritual selves, that's when we see really toxic systems of oppression and injustice. And, from my experience and my work with other people and tuning into, what their soul level knowledge is, it is about more cooperation, more humane treatment of each other. It tends to do justice to each other. So being out of touch means we're more apt to let things crumble and get really bad and watch our earth, crumble environmentally, and not sort of follow through with our human contract in being here the way that we could. In sort of the middle or toward the more benevolent side of it, we may just not be tapping into all of our abilities. So, it can go from being a severely toxic situation to a more mild version, which is just, you're not making the most of what you could be doing in, learning how to connect with people in a more productive way when you're collaborating in a meeting or, partnering up on a project. There are ways that our spiritual self sort of wants to engage in being more productive, efficient, creative. So to maximize our potential and also to repair the things that we've let get really bad. There's kind of a whole spectrum in which I see the necessity for that part of ourselves to be more engaged.
So let me ask you, how does it relate to, I have found myself thinking and also reading some other people's thoughts on the kind of the empathy deficit or the kindness deficit that seems to be dominant in our culture, particularly in the United States at this moment. Is that
to me,
kind of an example of that disconnection?
Yes, in that I think whenever we see a deficit of goodness or generosity of spirit or empathy, the root of that is that fear has taken over. When we become fearful of losing our own personal security, fearful of not being seen or known as valuable as an individual, we tend to sort of close up and shut down our highest nature to be good and generous and empathetic toward others. So, this is a great example of how none of us can do the fixing alone. We need people who are good at all kinds of areas of this sort of movement toward becoming more fully empowered selves. And one area is to help people become less fearful. A lot of us are used to thinking that our fears will be solved if something on the outside of us is fixed. If only, if the government would do this or this, or if my mother would say the right things, or my partner would ABC, then I can stop being fearful. And what I've discovered in my own personal journey and my work with others and all of my studies of the mystics through reading that I do, it's the inner being, the inner security that needs fostering more than anything to shed that fear that creates so much trouble. You know, there's plenty of science backing this up too. We know so much about how the brain works, how it shuts down in a state of fear, or, you know, the ways that our physical health is affected by stress and anxiety. And we have gone really far on the path of expecting technology. And by technology, I include Western medicine and our tendency to use pharmaceuticals to fix things like this. We've forgotten that we have some natural human and earth-based tools to use to facilitate and fuel that inner wellness. So that's a little bit what I'm here trying to provide and give the message for as well, that there needs to be a balance. I am a huge fan of science and technology. I don't ever want to sound like
no, you're not a Luddite.
Progress. I'm not asking us to roll back all the progress that's been made. It's just a balancing and staying on track to remember that we do have tools that we have gotten disconnected from, you know, especially how disconnected many people in developed countries are from the earth itself, and how to use, you know, the resources that are here and not waste them. I think that's a message that cannot be repeated often enough. And kind of miraculously, the more you connect with the earth, the more your spirit feels nurtured. And I think a lot of people just know that instinctively. Go on a hike and feel how great you feel afterwards. Sit under a tree to read a book instead of under fluorescent lighting. We know these things. So a lot of what I'm doing is offering language and sort of structures and practices to help people return to things that they deeply, deeply know inside, and to make it okay and comfortable to use language like that in the workplace, for example, or, you know, in family conversations about, you know, conflicts with your family. It can be used in so many different places that I'm just kind of trying to make it less weird for people to consider that side of themselves as a full participant in their life.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And so I want to make sure, we were talking about kind of new things coming up, and because I feel like we could have this. There were 5 more questions that came into my mind. And so I'm sorry, I'm kind of stuttering here, because I'm like, okay, I really want to get to a couple of your upcoming projects, and then we'll just have to have another conversation about the other stuff, because there's a lot there. But you do have, the last time we were talking, I'm very excited because you are putting together an upcoming, are you calling it a retreat?
I'm calling it a workshop, although
okay.
Language really does matter to me a lot. And I want to be clear that a big component of this experience, it's what I've created.
So tell me the name of it first of all.
It's the Leading Change program. It's targeted specifically to people who are leaders of social movements, nonprofit organizations doing really valuable, critical work, maybe leaders of educational programs for underserved communities, health organizations, people who are out there doing the really hard work, putting their own, you know, lives and energy and resources on the line to make things better for others, for the world that we live in. Especially in the couple of the years that we've been living where COVID has made everybody's work difficult, I feel so often connected to and empathetic toward people who are working in the nonprofit sector, in education, obviously healthcare. It's been such a trying time for everyone. And so I want to provide this workshop experience that is not just really valuable material to use for their own lives and for their organizations, but sort of a retreat for the soul, a reinvigoration of the the sense of purpose and soulfully being called to bravely continue the work that they're doing, to also foster more connections among leaders doing that work, so that, you know, people have a sense that there are others to lean on. When you're at the top of an organization, it can get kind of lonely to feel the weight of responsibility and
For sure.
the desperation of the times we're living in, and all of the extra, you know, fundraising pressures, all of the things that I am very aware go into leadership of causes and nonprofits, and certainly the world of education. So it's a mix. I'm calling it a workshop because we're providing really concrete structure to bring sacred awareness to your work, to your organization. So everything that we will teach the leaders who are participating can be used for their own life, their own, you know, restoration, revitalization, and also to help really bring material back to their organizations, whether it's their staff team in the office or the client population that they serve. All of the material that we're offering in this sacred awareness, it's actually called the Sacred Way. I'm sorry. The Sacred Way workshop is usable in a variety of formats and with different groups of people. So some of it is mind, body, spirit, movement practices, some guided meditation kinds of things, but fun. I always want to tell people it's not going to just be sitting around and oming on a mat. You know, we have some really cool and talented facilitators bringing in some of their methodology to use storytelling, to use creative art to express purpose and vocation. All of the theme of the Sacred Way is just to lift up what you as a leader are doing and what your organization is doing to a place where you know, you've got some empowering tools and a growing network of others who think along the same lines about the value of that work. So I'm really excited to connect with more people through this year.
I think that sounds great. So if, you know, if someone hears this, when someone hears this and they are interested and they're kind of asking themselves, am I the right fit for this? Do you have kind of an avatar of the person? Does it matter the size of their organization? Does it?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
No, I'm even including, there's a sort of a list on our website about the workshop that gives examples of different kinds of people that might be interested in doing it. And in that, I include students who might be studying, you know, let's say you're getting a master's in public administration and you really care about a specific cause and want to have some tools beyond what you've been learning in the classroom to stay, you know, empowered and passionate about whatever led you to your program in the first place.
Okay. Well, that was my next question is, so it sounds like it could be for someone kind of at the beginning of their journey,
preparing to lead. Yeah.
Someone who's in the middle, and even someone who's been in the trenches for decades.
I hope that exact thing, that we will have a mix in each time we collect a group of people to do this experience, that some really seasoned, you know, let's say executive directors of organizations that have been around for decades want to come and refresh their own commitment and their own spirit in their work. And in the room, then you have so many wonderful different perspectives that will feed each other's sense of tools and what they have to work with. So my hope is that I don't pinpoint too specifically what the ideal participant looks like, because I really feel strongly about the diversity of who's in the room. And it's something that we're starting in Los Angeles because that's where I am. I really want to get back to offering people in-person experiences with each other. We will be very safe about vaccines and making sure people are tested and all of that. The first one we're offering is later in March, so I hope by then we'll be in pretty good shape for people meeting in person. And then I've got some other cities where we've talked about doing it already later in the year. So if you don't happen to be in Los Angeles and you're hearing about this, I very much want people to communicate with us about their interest, about us bringing it to wherever you are, because I think it's a really special and unique way to connect with others in your area of, it's a different kind of leadership network that has that soul level connection instead of maybe a subject area or groups that are based on the population they're serving or whatever it might be.
And I guess the other question I have is, because you mentioned that it would give them participants some real tangible tools to bring back to their organization. Would it be something where because I know sometimes it's, when you go to a really great workshop and you have this experience, it is, some of it is hard to replicate by yourself back at your organization. So is there the potential to bring you in to kind of further that work, or how, how can you, do you have an idea of how you're going to kind of support people moving forward after?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because I think it's a really important piece of what the Silver Owl Group is offering participants, that you don't just come to one workshop and then we send you off with best wishes, but that we are able to consult on specific programs you might want to do in your organization. I feel strongly that I have the word group in the name of the company because it's not just me. I have this great network, and it's always growing, of other facilitators, depending on what your organization or you need for bringing this sacred awareness or some mindfulness practice to your company. Let's say I have all kinds of different people to draw from their expertise and their actual help too. So it's definitely a tailorable process to do that consulting. But it's also something where after the weekend workshop, it's really a Friday evening and full Saturday day. We'll have a journal for everyone to really retain what they've done. I'm actually probably going to have a printed handbook with some of the structures. That's, this framework of sacred awareness will be something they can take back with them and actually have some concrete things that they should be able to do. That's ideally, the goal is that it won't require a whole lot of extra support, but if you're interested in really getting deeper in one of the areas, that we can do that. So yes, I hope to be an ongoing resource for everyone who participates, and that it really becomes a growing network.
Yeah, a movement even.
I like it. Yes, that's the idea.
I like that very much. Now, the other thing I wanted to ask you about, and I'm not sure if you're not ready to talk about it, it's okay. I know that you worked, part of the pandemic was spent on doing a book proposal. And I'm sure that you not only have a book, but have multiple books in you. But what's the book that's going to be forthcoming?
The first one I'm starting with is really, it's my story. It's a memoir, but I can't help myself but to include some tools at the end of each chapter, kind of structure that way. So it's sort of a teaching memoir, but it is one of the ways that I've always done a lot of writing, and my work was so much in communications and writing before starting this company. But I feel like it's another good tool for me to help people bridge that gap of either understanding or conceptualization of how we can be sort of a real, regular, everyday interacting person and a deeply spiritual being who has all of this other rich stuff going on, and to make that more accessible and comfortable, and share a little bit about how I went from, kid on the playground and roller skating and playing basketball and, being a mom and driving a minivan at one point. And also I do these sessions with people where I connect with their spirit guides and people who've passed away from their family, and really communicate about what their ancestors have to say about their lives. How do those two things, those two pictures don't go together for a lot of people. So
Yeah.
that's what that memoir is, a place for me to try to share more and explain by showing instead of telling. So it's a process. I've been working on it for quite a while, and I'm always glad when people ask me about it, because it's really forcing me to get the thing done, and I will. But it's another great tool, I think, for people to get to know how they can find the same things within themselves, I think.
Oh, for sure. And I think that there's, I wonder, as there's more conversation around generational trauma, and that we have a sense of kind of in the kind of more hard science community around, kind of the kind of the DNA that carries with us our ancestors. I mean, obviously it carries our ancestors' information, but I think we have a different sense of what all is encompassed in that. It's beyond, do I have brown eyes or blue eyes, right?
Absolutely. That's a really good way to put it. It's another angle, basically, to look at that story of epigenetics and how we carry, our ancestors went through a trauma and we have the effect still in our bodies. For me, my gifts for picking up emotional content from people, or from energy, just tells that same story from another perspective. People are always stunned to find out that a stranger, I can sit down across from them and identify some things that have happened in a pattern through their family. And it's just, it shows how strong those stories remain, and the connections that tie us in our families and other people we've interacted with. Frankly, it's not only blood relatives. Sometimes other people come up that just had a really big impact on our experience in those formative years as a child, or it can be a variety.
Well, and I think because I have worked with you, and the way that I also like to think about it, and for people who are curious, who haven't worked with Amanda, or a medium before, or someone who works in the psychic realm, it is, there are these, there's the history, the past part of it. What's really beautiful about your work is that the conversation, it's not just about revisiting the past, right? It's about actually continuing the conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah. I always try to say that without hurting anyone's feelings. It's true for all of us. We are kind of self-absorbed creatures. So with the reason we care to know that, our great grandmother is around is because we want to know what she thinks of us.
Right.
What does she have to say about the road that I'm on now? And frankly, from spiritual perspective, once a soul is released from physical experience, the best way I can describe it is they are so able to pour their attention and love and interest toward us, that's one of the reasons I feel like I get such great detail that just astounds people, like, what, that's so specific that you can tell that. And I'm like, well, this great grandmother's just got all kinds of freedom and ability to come into you. So, but yes, most of the sessions that I have one-on-one with people or in small group readings end up being very much about the listener's life path, the direction they're pointed. You know, maybe they feel like they're really at a crossroads or not feeling emotionally connected to something they've committed to doing. And the perspective of a spirit reading for that is so beautiful because it just opens doors. It shines light where we need light. And, you know, it's such enjoyable work for me because I'm just there to, you know, be along for the ride and be the voice that is getting these messages across. But each one is so unique, and it speaks to the unique listener and the people that have been part of their life. And so I'm glad that you brought up that work, because actually just today I was having a meeting about the workshop coming up, and someone said, so are you still doing your readings? And I said, oh yes, I'm still doing my readings, because it's just such a soul feeding work for me that
well, it's life affirming.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, I know that is, you know, kind of maybe sounds funny. I don't say it as a joke. I mean, it's
oh, it
really,
is. Yeah. And I feel so, I always talk about how honored I feel to be asked to do that. And I don't ever want people to think that that's just, you know, a platitude, that it really does feel like an honor to be invited into that conversation. It's, you know, this, your soul's story, the story of the people that you're connected with. It really is beautiful. It makes life beautiful. So that's my benefit, one of my work perks is getting to have that dose of that feeling from all the readings that I do.
Well, and if I'm remembering correctly, so your the Reiki, your certification as a Reiki healer is a relatively new modality that you.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I really decided to go through that training in, let's see, it must have started in 2020 when we were all living our lives really differently, even back then. So yes, I've gone through Reiki levels 1 and 2, which is up to the point of practicing with other people. Reiki level 3 is for those who want to teach and train others in Reiki.
Okay.
And because I already do a lot of other things, I just stopped with the practicing part of it. So I've added that. I found that when I added Reiki into what I do as a spirit reader and communicator, it just added a really beautiful level of information. You know, when people are storing energy in their bodies in a either painful way, or they have felt sort of general malaise, or whatever their body is feeling off, there's so often a spiritual, energetic component of it that tells me more in doing the practice of the healing, the energy healing. So even when I do a Reiki session with people, we tend to have a component that's a little bit of a reading where I speak with them if they want, if they're interested in that part. So I would say it's a little bit of a mix when I do those sessions, but it's a very beautiful practice and has just sort of enriched what I'm able to offer in, again, the language I can give people for what's happening, and, you know, how else can we understand some of these things that we either rely on science alone to explain, or we just ignore it and don't value it. So there's another layer that can offer us a lot of information.
So I have never experienced Reiki, so I'm not familiar with what.
We'll have to do that in this new year.
I know, definitely. Are you able, is that something that you need to be in person, or is that something that can happen remotely?
Actually, that can be remote too. Yeah, it's a really incredible thing to remind us how connected we all are. That, you know, I also do my readings remotely. I've done readings literally across the globe from people that I've been connecting with, and I don't even have to be on the phone or on Zoom to do either one. Really well-practiced Reiki healers do the same. You send Reiki. It's an energetic exchange. So just like I can pick up information and details and just email you, the details of what I've picked up in a reading, it goes the other way too. A parallel experience is all of the studies that have been done about the power of prayer, when collective energy, people don't even need to know that they are being prayed for. And it's been shown that collective energy poured towards someone with real benevolence and goodness has an actual effect. So there again is another way that I feel like the more different sort of modalities or forms of language we can apply to these concepts, the more people will start to benefit from them, because what might feel a little too strange or inaccessible to one person may be just the way the door opens to them to sort of tap into something more in their life. So I just keep opening up and offering different ways for people to come at the information, and think of myself as an educator in that way as much as a healing person. So.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's always I feel like I learn something new every time I talk to you. And I want to close it's a big topic. So we may just kind of talk a little bit about it, and then we can have some more depth on it next time we talk.
Okay.
As you know, kind of as we moved into talking about the modalities where you are working more one-on-one with people, one of the conversations you and I have had offline is around cultural systems, community systems, and how they're in developed countries, there seems to be less of those types of systems. And even I think we were talking about it in relation to so many children and young adults not having a in-person graduation.
Oh yeah, we were talking
During
about that need
COVID, and
yeah.
kind of that being one of kind of the few rites of passage, if you will, a system that really kind of celebrates a certain moment in time, and the importance of those. So let's just touch on
That's a great question to connect a little bit to what this workshop offering, The Sacred Way, gets into. Things like ritual, sacred storytelling, sacred symbolism, the things that we attach meaning to have been either missing entirely, in the example of, our not getting to have some of the regular rituals, but also the more people have drifted away from organized religion. That's just not a cultural practice for so many people, to have some of these repeated uses of language that means something to the group. A moment in time, like you're talking about, looking back and looking forward, and giving someone a sense of what they're connected to before they go off and become, an independent adult. While I have had a rich religious background in my family, and it's been really important to forming who I am as a spiritual person now, I don't really see it as entirely bad that organized religion is losing its grip, because I think in so many ways that has been an area of toxic messaging, that the ways that we've gotten it wrong are wrong enough that I don't think it's entirely bad to see religion in this period of transition. Now, individual spirituality is just sort of all over the place. People are calling everything spirituality, which is not bad either. but it's missing some of that grounded, collective, communal experience that I think really helps us as a society in moving forward together in progress. So I didn't quite answer your question directly.
No, but it's a big question. And I guess, so when I think of particularly organized religion and really, its participation in some of the most oppressive systems that are, that still exist in our society. So from that standpoint, that there's, I guess part of the conversation that you and I were having is that there is this questioning of certain systems, as there should be. There's been a lot of increased awareness around social systems and particularly the institutional racism that has been prevalent in the United States.
Sexism, all kinds of oppression that, yeah.
So there's those things that I think are asking to be rethought, to be reimagined, and then there are those certain kind of rites of passage or milestones, particularly for younger adults, that seem to be less kind of available or less regular. So
we haven't replaced, we're in this place of not having replaced the thing that we're trying to get rid of and not quite knowing how to do that. I always think of one of my grandmother's favorite, "Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater" phrases, that we've been willing to toss all of it and forgetting that there are some really valuable things about coming together on a weekly basis with people in your community. Like when I was growing up in a church, we knew that there was this whole community of people who knew me as a child outside of my teachers in school and my friends. It was, the little old church ladies who would pinch our cheeks. That offers a young person something as you grow up and have that place to go. Sacred language, beautiful poetry that you find in sacred texts. So you may not want to use the Bible or the Quran or those might turn you off, but if there's nothing left in your life that you hold sacred in language, like beautiful poetry, or it doesn't have to be written, it could be another aesthetic. It's an important reason that I want our workshops to have an art component, because we are humans with all of these senses, and our aesthetic sense of the sacred is a valuable component of life also. So we are these multi-layered people, and without a structure where those things take place, the rites of passage, the retelling stories over and over, oral tradition, that kind of thing. There's just this big gap that offers young people something. And especially right now, I keep talking with people about what kids are going through with all of the back and forth, online school, in-person school, discontinuity across the board is basically what we're seeing. The lack of anchoring, of rootedness at that stage when they're developing hormonally, intellectually, in every way. We're going to start to see some real significant impacts of that that we can't tell right now. So by our offering, the Silver Owl Group offering workshops to leaders of organizations that serve young people, especially, is one of the places close to my heart, having worked with kids in juvenile halls and foster care. And I'm working now on becoming a CASA volunteer for court children in the dependency systems through the courts. It's important for those who are serving, trying to help the young people come up through this crazy time we're living in, that the adults have some of these tools, and more we're seeing even adults don't have them, maybe, or they keep them very segmented. They're compartmentalized in one area of your life, and you're not necessarily seeing how it applies to your work life. So I just want to make that more fluid and comfortable for people, and give some sort of non-sectarian, non-religion based tools that come from the tradition of some religions. We learn so much by studying what different indigenous peoples of our country have used in community and storytelling and art. And it's a, definitely another topic for how wiped away that beautiful, valuable, necessary knowledge and wisdom is. So that's something that I draw from personally, and in thinking about how we do our workshops too. So yeah, you are so right that it's a huge topic, and we can't necessarily cram it into these last minutes, but it's something I hope people think about with an open mind, because so many of us have stories about religion that have made us want to just toss out the whole subject. And
Right.
it's the thing that you don't want to bring up at family dinners, like politics or whatever else. So I think we can do better than just tossing it out and forgetting the value of some of those structures.
For sure. And I think more will be revealed. It would be great to talk with you after your workshop in March. And because I know that whenever you, from my own experience, whenever you do anything like that, I mean, you learn as much as the participants learn.
Absolutely. I'm so excited about that. Really.
Yes.
I've had a long period of just doing a lot of study and kind of quiet contemplative work, and now getting back into an engaging environment will be really great. So, and if anyone needs information about those workshops, just silverowl.org is a good place to start. That's where our group can be found, and the information about that workshop. People can email info@silverowl.org, and we can be in touch that way.
That sounds fantastic. And I'll make sure that in the notes that accompany this show, we'll include that.
Cool. Thank you so much. This has
You
been
are
really fun.
so welcome. Well, be well, and we will talk to you real soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Our goal is to inspire others and share stories to find meaning in your daily life. Let go of the traditional norms and be yourself at home, work, and beyond. The awareness of bright spots and blind spots is a performance-enhancing tool that you can apply to your life and to your organization today.